Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a great day so far and welcome to today's video, which is a highly requested guide to picking your foundation shade online. I consider myself a highly trained expert in this field. I have been picking my foundation shades online for years and years now, even long before I started my YouTube channel. I live in the middle of nowhere. I live in England. We don't have access to a lot of foundation brands in shops here in person. It's a rare occasion that I get to choose my foundation shade in any other way than online. So I have got it down to a fine art. And so I'm here to share all of my tips, tricks, and steps that I take to ensure that I can really confidently choose my correct or my closest possible shade online every time, because that is especially important here because we cannot return makeup. Okay, I know in the US if you get your wrong shade, a lot of the time you can just return it to Sephora and get another shade. We can't do that here. We're not allowed to return makeup that we have used. Even Selfridges won't even allow you to return makeup that you haven't used but it has arrived at your property. So we have to get it right first time or we're throwing money in the bin. So I have worked hard on this. I'm going to be sharing all of the tea, and by the end of this video you are too going to be a professional, an expert at choosing the correct foundation shade online. Let's get started. By the way, if I sound and look like an absolute bag of frogs, it's because the children finally took me down. They've given me the lurgy. I fought it off for weeks. It finally got me. I'm a bit froggy, I'm a bit hoarse, I'm a bit disgusting, but we're powering through because that's what women do, isn't it? We're always powering through. So first things first, you can't even look online at a foundation shade range before you know your undertone and the depth of your skin tone. Those are the two bits that you need. Even if you're going to take a wild guess without any of these other tips, you must know your undertone and the depth. Otherwise, where are you even going to start? So the options for undertone: warm, cool, neutral, olive. Those are pretty much your options when it comes to undertone. So what do we mean by undertone? This is literally like the tone of your skin, the color that your skin appears, and that doesn't account for redness or discoloration that you might have on top of your skin. This is the hue that your skin appears in, like natural daylight. So if you are warm toned, your skin has a yellow warm undertone. If you are cool toned, then your undertone will be pink or red, and if you are neutral it will be a balance of those two. If you are olive, it will have like a green brown hue to it, like myself. But many of us don't have a really strong undertone, and it's not immediately obvious just by looking in the mirror or looking at our body and thinking, what's my undertone? For some people, you'll look in the mirror and you'll say, yes, I have a very yellow cast to my skin, I'm obviously warm toned. But if you are not sure just by looking at your skin tone, then here are some tips and tricks to working it out once and for all. Number one, look at your veins. Must be in natural daylight, not indoor fluorescent lighting, not direct sunlight, natural daylight. Go outside, have a look at the veins on your wrist. If you are warm toned, they will appear green. If you are cool toned, they will appear blue. If you are neutral, they will be a mixture of the two. And if you have an olive undertone, unhelpfully, they will appear much the same as a neutral skin tone, because olive undertone sits somewhere on the spectrum between warm and neutral. So it's kind of like a warm neutral nuance of a shade. So your veins will most likely also appear a mixture of green and blue. If you're still not sure of your undertone, a couple more tricks. One, how well does your skin tan in the sun? If you burn very, very easily and struggle to get a tan, you are more likely a cool undertone. If you catch the sun very, very easily and you tan very easily, you are most likely a warm tone. And if you're somewhere in between, you can catch a bit of a tan. You don't burn frequently or very easily, but you also don't completely change colour in the sun, then you could be a neutral undertone. As an olive undertone, You'll probably know already if you have an olive undertone, because you've probably been told your entire life. You completely go up about 5 or 6 different shades in the summer, as I do. I'm always being accused of wearing fake tan because, you know, a few days of the sun touching my bod and I've got horrendous strap lines. I tan very, very easily, and I do, especially in winter. It's very clear to see that green undertone to my skin. In summer, it goes a little more reddish with the tan, so it's a little trickier to pick up, but because I do tan so much. But another trick is your jewelry. If you lean towards, and the jewelry that suits you best is gold, then again you are likely a warm undertone. If silver suits you better, you are more likely to be a cool undertone, and if you can wear either and they look equally as good on you, then you most likely have a neutral undertone. So hopefully that has helped you narrow down what you think your undertone is. When it comes to the depth of your skin tone, that's much easier to work out. You know, if you've ever purchased a foundation in your life, you'll know whereabouts in the range you sit. If you're right at the very bottom, the lightest shades, you have a fair skin tone. If you're usually a few shades up from the bottom, the lightest shades, you light, medium, medium to tan, tan, deep and dark, and you are most likely to know whereabouts you fall on the spectrum. In winter, I am at the very lightest end of medium, at my most fair, and then in summer I can go up to like the lightest end of tan, and that's kind of where I sit, depending whether it's summer or winter. But if you don't really change skin tone as dramatically as I do throughout the year, then you will most likely stay in the same category throughout. So once you have your, I'm a light medium and a warm tone, then you're good to go to start narrowing things down. The other thing I want to add in here for my olive toned friends is that there are nuances to olive as well. Not everybody who has an olive undertone has the exact same undertone. There are neutral olives, cool olives and warm olives, and if like me, you may change depending on the time of year and how much sun has been in contact with your skin. But what I will say is you don't need to be 100% sure I'm a warm olive, neutral olive, cool olive, because guess what? You're never going to get that much choice in a foundation range. Very few foundation shade ranges offer any olive shades at all, and those that do, it's typically just, you know, 3 or 4 olive shades, and they really don't go as far as having the nuanced different undertones of olive. There's usually just one that's kind of in the ballpark of your depth of skin that's going to work for you. So we don't need to know necessarily exactly what tone of olive we are, because you just aren't going to have that many options. If you ever have an olive option at all, we are pretty excited. Some of the best brands for olive undertones, if you are an olive friend, that I have ever found are Haus Labs, Shiseido, Lisa Aldridge and Pat McGrath. Those are the 4 brands that offer a number of olive undertones. They do their olive undertones very well. So if you struggle to find natural, accurate olive undertones in foundation ranges, I would try those brands 100%. They are the best that I have found. For the rest of the time, when a foundation range does not offer olive shades, or they don't do them very well, they just make them bright yellow, which seems to happen quite often, I've found for myself the best bet is to go with the neutral tones, because it's just going to be the closest. Cool tones do not look good on me. Warm tones always look very orange on my skin tone. They always look off. They always look very either yellow or orange on my skin tone, just completely off. The closest, safest bet, if there aren't any accurate olive undertones available, is to go for a neutral shade. Because let's face it, most of the time there isn't going to be for anybody an exact perfect match in most foundation shade ranges, especially not if you have a slightly tricky undertone like an olive undertone, or you have a very, very fair or very, very deep skin tone. You might have to choose between the correct depth and the correct undertone. I will typically choose the correct undertone. If I have to choose between it's the exact depth of my skin tone or it's the exact undertone, I will choose undertone, because the wrong undertone looks completely off on me and it's hard to correct. Whereas if a shade is half a shade too deep or half a shade too light, you can kind of balance it out with bronzer or concealer and everything will match up. But if the undertone is completely wrong, I just find it pulls all of my makeup and it just looks bizarre. So the next step, one of the most helpful, is to find some shade twins. I know everybody has probably heard or seen people talking about shade twins. I know I have a lot of shade twins who follow me and watch my foundation reviews specifically because we are shade twins, and you want to see how products look on someone who is your skin tone and your undertone. What I mean by shade twins, if you don't know, if you haven't heard that expression before, it's creators, beauty YouTubers, Instagrammers, TikTokers, wherever. It's people who create beauty content, who review makeup, who are your exact skin tone. This is so helpful because they're going to do all the work for you. You don't need to do any of the rest of these things. If you found some really reliable shade twins and they have reviewed the foundation or the product that you're looking to shade match in, you don't need to do anything. You just need to go to their page. They've reviewed this foundation. What shade do they have? They said it's a good match. That's my shade. It's amazing. You know, I worked very hard trying to find shade twins on YouTube when I first started getting into makeup, and I now have like my 3 or 4 shade twins that I know, although I don't necessarily need them so much anymore, but it's always helpful to know these people are my exact same skin tone. If they review something first, or if they buy something first, especially if it's available in the US before it's here, gives me a head start to work out my shade looking at those reviews. Even if they are a little bit lighter or a little bit deeper than you, it gives you a place to start. You know, I know that Tara Lynn, for example, is warmer than me. She has a warm tone as opposed to an olive undertone, and she's in summer like maybe half to 1 shade deeper than me. So I know if, say, for example, she's a shade 10, that's the warm tone, I'll go like a shade up to the neutral one, and I know that's going to be about right. So they don't even have to be an exact match to you. They just need to give you a benchmark to start from. Find yourself some shade twins. I'll give you a couple of mine. In winter, Samaj, that's spelt with lots of extra A's. She is like perfect. She is more warm as opposed to neutral, but again, gives me an area to start in. Tara Lynn, as I said, she's usually half to 1 shade deeper than me in summer. And the Mexican beauty, she's my perfect undertone. Again, in summer we're exact, in winter I'm fairer than her, but we have the same undertone. So again, those channels, I'm always straight on to their reviews because I know I'm going to get a really good idea of my shade from their shades. The next thing to do is to start finding, either in foundations you've already tried and used, or you have access to other people's, etc. Try and find a few matches. Doesn't have to be a foundation that you like, just has to be one that is a good match for you. You want to start building up some reference points because that's going to be very, very helpful in the next couple of steps. If you've tried foundations and you're like, it didn't work for me, it doesn't wear very well, don't like the finish, don't like the coverage, but the shade match is ideal, keep a note of those shade matches and just build them up. Whenever you find a foundation that's a good shade match, keep note. Even if it's one that's a hair too dark, a hair too light, a hair off in the undertone, keep a note of your closest shade matches. We're going to use them later. Next up, always check Sephora US. The UK one is not as good, but the US Sephora website is a goldmine of information when it comes to foundations. So let's take a look at the Sephora page for the Shiseido Revitaliscent Skin Glow Foundation. This was one that I was answering questions about recently. People were asking me, because I did a whole load of swatches, people asking me what undertone does this shade have? And I went onto Cult Beauty, which is where I would shop Shiseido in the UK, and they just have the shade names and numbers, no information about the undertones. So if for this same foundation, if you go onto Sephora and you click on any shade, 230 Alder, which is all the information that you have on most other sites, on the Sephora website, it describes Alder, which is like one of my favorite, as fair as I get in winter shades. It's described as golden with a slight olive tone for light skin. So it actually gives you the undertone description for each shade. I don't know if it does it for every single foundation, but literally everyone I've ever looked up on Sephora US has that undertone information, and lots of other websites don't do that. They don't give you any description of the shades. All you get is the name or number and some pictures. Sephora are very good at doing the description of the undertones. You then have a load of pictures. The one at the bottle isn't going to be much use to us. This classic splodge of the shade on a white paper card background. This is useful to a point. It's not very helpful when it comes to deciding if this is the right depth for you, because it's going to look a lot lighter, probably shot in a studio with a lot of light, very bright scenario. It's probably going to look a lot lighter than it is in reality, but what this is going to do very well is show you the undertone of the foundation, because although you've read the description, they aren't always accurate, are they? So, or the undertone is very extreme, so it might say it's a warm tone and it's extremely yellow and maybe you aren't as warm as that. This white background really helps the undertones show through, so you can really see, does that look like it's going to be a good match for me? The next really useful picture is one of somebody wearing the foundation. This is usually the most useful for me because I can really see, does this person look like me? Do they look much fairer than me? Do they look much deeper than me? Does their undertone, how does the foundation look? Especially when it shows their skin bare in comparison to the foundation, because sometimes it's not even a good match for the model. And you can see that before and after when the foundation is added, whether the foundation has gone very warm on them or very cool, or if it looks like a really great match. And then we have the swatches. Now, Shiseido, these look like real swatches. To me, a lot of the time these are computer generated, but these are quite useful on the different depths of skin on the arms to see a comparison. So if you've narrowed it down to a few shades and you can see them all together in one place on one arm, that's again going to give you, oh, that one's actually looking more neutral. Actually, that one looks quite warm in comparison to this one. It's going to give you a good reference point between, if you're choosing between a couple of shades. So I always go onto Sephora because they have the most information. They always gives undertone information, and the review section is also very helpful. A lot of the time people will put pictures up and you can see the foundation on their skin. Some people even give reference shades, which is always amazing. Do that if you can. Let's help each other out. So now, if you still don't know, by looking at these pictures, reading the description, working out your undertone, checking with your shade twins, the last step that I will use quite often are shade finders. So there are two of these that I use mostly. One is Foundation and the other is Sephora's own. They both have shade matching technology. So you can go on, enter in a few of the matches that you've already found, whether or not they work for you, just foundations that you know are pretty close to being a great match. Put as many as you can into the software and it will tell you what shade it recommends in the foundation that you're looking to buy. Some brands on their own website also have these shade finders, so worth trying in a few different places and also trying all of the ones that you can find, because I have heard that the Sephora one is a bit hit and miss. I've had excellent results with the foundation one, especially if you can put like 4 or 5 matches in there. It's really going to give you at least a very good place to start and to check out and to look at the photos and the description of the shade it tells you. It's really, really helpful, especially if you don't have any idea where to start, but you have a couple of really good matches. It's going to immediately give you a very good option. If you really are struggling to find anywhere to style, any half decent matches, you could always go in store and get matched. People have varying, wildly different experiences of this, and obviously it completely depends on the brand that you're going to, whether they actually have any good matches for your skin tone and your undertone, and 2, the person who is assisting you and how good they are at doing that. But what I would really recommend is to not just get them to swatch, which they often will wipe a bit of foundation off if you're wearing it, and they'll just put a few stripes there and then tell you what they think. But what you need to do is go outside. Whenever someone has done this properly on me, they've given me a hand mirror and said, go outside and have a look in the natural daylight, and get them to actually put it on like the whole lower half of your skin or even your whole face, and go outside into the natural daylight to get a sample. If you're still unsure, ask someone, if you have a friend nearby, to look at you in natural daylight. Does it look good? That's a great start again with getting those matches and getting a list of reference shades. Another website that I would advise as being really, really helpful is Lisa Aldridge's. She has a great foundation shade range with plenty of olive undertones and lots of nuanced undertones available. She also has a really great shade finder with all of the information and pictures of models in realistic lighting, so you can really see where you might sit. But she also sells foundation, like shade matching cards, so you can, you know, if you know that you're kind of light medium, or you know you're medium, you can buy a sample with a load of the shades to try at home, and there's enough in there to like try it all over your face and really take your time and look between the shades. So even if you're not interested in the Lisa Aldridge foundation, or it doesn't work for you, that's a great way, by, you know, spending £2 or £4 on a couple of cards, to find one excellent match where you can, you know, then start to build up more and work from that reference shade. I also ask everybody who is available to me. My mum was staying with us once when I was trying to buy a foundation shade online, and she was so good. She literally looked through. Sometimes it's hard to see for yourself who you look like, because you also can't look at your own face and a picture of someone else's face at the same time, like side by side. You can take a photo, that might be helpful, but you are going to be in different lighting, etc. So I find it so helpful, even if it's your husband, who think is going to be absolutely useless, but mine actually is really helpful. And it's not because they understand what's going on, believe me. It's just because actually you're not asking them to understand makeup or anything that's going on here. You're just saying, which of these 2 or 3 people do you think looks most like my skin tone? And they're able to look between the two. I found that very successful as well. Asking, you know, your mum or whoever is in the room with you when you're trying to pick a foundation shade to look side by side. It's much easier for someone else to do a lot of the time than it is for yourself for some reason, because, you know, we see ourselves differently, don't we? So that is also something that I found really, really successful in the past. I always list my closest, my best winter and summer foundation shades in every video. You can find them in my description box. Those are my best winter and summer shades that I have found, and I update it quite regularly. If I find a new shade that's even better, or a new shade comes out, or I find a new foundation that I've got really good matches in, then I do update that from time to time. So I hope that is helpful to you if you are around my shade either in winter or summer. But these are all of the tips and tricks that I use, and I do all of these every time I'm choosing a foundation. I go through a whole routine, and I have got it, like I said, down to such a fine art that even when brands like Louboutin make it as hard as possible for us to pick a good shade, I feel like I can really confidently pick it every single time online just by eyeballing it at this point. But these are all of the steps I take when it's really hard, when I really don't know, when there are no reviews up yet. These are the steps that I go through to really confidently and successfully choose the best shade for me. So there you have it. If you have any additional tips and tricks that when it comes to picking your foundation shade online, please drop it in the comments section. I know you guys probably have lots more amongst you all that we could all share and get as many different things to do as possible, so we can save ourselves some money. It's nothing worse, is there, than being so excited about a new foundation arrive. I just love trying new foundations. You've got one arriving, it comes in the post, and then it's completely wildly off shade wise, and you might have just put 60 odd pounds in the bin, which is horrifying. And then you just have to wear it anyway, looking insane because you paid for it, so it's going on your face. So if we can avoid that, I'd love us to. I really want that for us in 2024. So I really hope that you found all of my tips and tricks for finding your perfect foundation shade online helpful today. Thank you so much for watching. I'd love to see you in the next one. Otherwise, take care for now. Bye.